For a second, I just stared at her, waiting for her to explain like there had to be a normal reason for a sentence like that. There wasn't. "What do you mean, immediately?" I asked, my voice coming out thinner than I expected. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The clerk straightened a stack of files like this was routine. "It means the results you're holding don't match your legal birth record. If there's an error, it likely originated there." "Error?" my dad cut in, letting out a sharp, humorless laugh. "No, there's no error. This just proves what I've been saying." He pointed at me like I was evidence. "She's not mine." I turned to him, heat rising in my chest. "It says I'm not mom's either." That shut him up. For the first time in my life, Richard Haper didn't have a response ready. His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. He just looked at my mom. She was already shaking. "Lily," she said quietly, reaching for my arm, "we don't have to do this here. We can go home and talk." "No," I pulled back. "We've been talking for 24 years, and all it's done is let him tell everyone I'm some kind of mistake." My dad scoffed under his breath, but he didn't deny it. I looked down at the paper again, forcing myself to read the line one more time. No biological match to either parent. It wasn't vague. It wasn't unclear. It was absolute. "Which hospital?" I asked. My mom hesitated. That hesitation hit harder than anything my dad had ever said. "Mom," I pressed, slower this time, "which hospital was I born in?" She swallowed, eyes flicking toward the clerk, then back to me like she was calculating something. And then she said it barely above a whisper. "The one on Mercer Street." The clerk's expression changed instantly. Not surprise. Recognition. And that's when she said, a little louder this time, "You should go. Now." We didn't say another word until we were outside. The courthouse doors slammed behind us, and the noise of the street rushed in like nothing had just happened, but everything had. I was still holding the DNA results in my hand, like if I let go, this would all stop being real. "Get in the car," my dad said, already walking ahead, keys in hand. That was it. No argument, no denial, just control like he could steer this back into something that made sense for him. My mom lingered beside me. "Lily, we should think about this first." I turned to her. "You already knew something was wrong, didn't you?" Her face crumpled for a split second, too fast for anyone else to notice. But I saw it. "I didn't times know," she said quickly. I didn't want to open something we couldn't close." "That's not an answer." My dad honked the horn once, sharp, impatient. Same as always. I got in the back seat without another word. My mom sat in the passenger seat, hands clenched in her lap. The engine started, and within seconds, we were moving. No music, no conversation, just tension, thick and suffocating. I stared out the window, watching the city blur past, and for the first time in my life, I realized something that didn't sit right. This wasn't just about him being wrong. If he was wrong, then everything he built his accusations on was gone. So why didn't that feel like relief? "Say something," my dad muttered, eyes locked on the road. "You first," I shot back. "You've had 24 years. He exhaled sharply. "Fine, the test is flawed. That's the only explanation. Labs make mistakes." "It's court-ordered," I cut in. "Chain of custody, verified samples. You're the one who insisted on that." His grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Then we run it again." My mom shook her head immediately. "No." Both of us looked at her. "No?" my dad repeated. "Slower now." She stared straight ahead. "Not yet." "Why not?" I demanded. Silence. The kind that stretches too long. The kind that answers the question without saying anything. I leaned forward slightly. "Mom, why not?" Her voice dropped. "Because if it comes back the same, then we can't pretend this is a mistake anymore." That landed harder than anything else. Pretend. So that's what we'd been doing. The car slowed as we turned onto Mercer Street. The hospital came into view older than I expected. Brick faded, signage slightly crooked like it hadn't been updated in years. "This place?" I said quietly. "You were born there," my dad replied. But there was hesitation now. Small, but real. We pulled into the parking lot. For a moment, no one moved. Then my dad opened his door. Let's get this over with. Inside, the air smelled like antiseptic and something older underneath, like time had settled into the walls. The front desk clerk looked up as we approached. Can I help you? Yes, I said, stepping forward before either of them could speak. I placed the DNA results on the counter. I need access to my birth records. There's been a mistake. She barely glanced at the paper. Records from that long ago are archived. You'll need to file a request. Lily Haper. The voice came from behind us. We all turned. An older nurse stood a few feet away, staring directly at me like she already knew why I was here. Her eyes moved slowly to my mom, and then everything about her expression changed. Haper, she repeated softly. The way she said it wasn't casual. It was careful. And then she asked, "What did they tell you about the night you were born?" The way she said it made my stomach drop. Not times when times you were born. Not times how. The night. Nothing, I answered, before my parents could step in. I was told it was normal. The nurse held my gaze for a second longer than comfortable, like she was measuring how much I could handle. Then she glanced around the lobby. Not here, she said quietly. Follow me. My dad immediately stepped forward. If this is about records, we can handle it through administration. It's not, she cut him off, calm but firm. That stopped him. We followed her down a narrow hallway, away from the front desk, past doors labeled Times Records, staff only, neonatal unit. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. No chatter, no footsteps. Just the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. She pushed open a small office door and motioned us inside. Close it, she said. I did. The second the latch clicked, the atmosphere shifted, like whatever this was, it didn't belong outside that room. The nurse didn't sit. She stayed standing, hands folded tightly, eyes moving between the three of us. I wasn't sure I'd ever see that name again, she said. My dad crossed his arms. Then start talking. Because right now, all we have is a faulty DNA test and a lot of speculation. She ignored him. Her focus stayed on me. The night you were born, there was an incident. I felt my chest tighten. What kind of incident? A power failure, she said. A full outage. Backup generator took longer than it should have to kick in. My mom sucked in a breath beside me. The nurse continued, voice steady but lower now. The neonatal unit lost monitoring systems for several minutes. Staff were working manually. It was chaotic. That happens, my dad said quickly. Hospitals have protocols. They do, she agreed. And most nights they work. Most times hung in the air. I stepped closer. What does that have to do with me? Her eyes didn't leave mine. There were 2 births within minutes of each other, she said. Both female. Both healthy at first. At first? I echoed. One of the infants experienced respiratory distress shortly after delivery, she said. They were moved, quickly, without the usual documentation process. Something in my chest started to pound harder. Moved where? I asked. Between units, she said. Between bassinets. Staff were trying to stabilize her while systems were down. My dad let out a frustrated breath. So what? You're saying paperwork got messy? That doesn't explain a DNA test saying she's not ours. The nurse finally looked at him. No, she said. It doesn't. Silence pressed in again. Then she turned back to me. When the systems came back online, she continued, everything had to be reconstructed. Identities, times, placements. Staff relied on memory, on partial notes. My mom shook her head slowly. No, they wouldn't just guess. The nurse didn't respond right away. That was the answer. I felt my throat go dry. Are you saying they didn't know which baby was which? She hesitated, just long enough. We believed we corrected it, she said carefully. Believed. My dad took a step forward, anger rising. That's not an answer. Either she's ours or she's not. The nurse cut in, sharper this time. There was a review after, she said. Internal. Quiet. Why quiet? I asked. Her jaw tightened. Because admitting uncertainty in a neonatal identification case, she paused, choosing her words, has consequences hospitals don't survive easily. The room felt smaller, hotter. I looked down at the DNA results still clutched in my hand, then back at her. So you're telling me there's a chance? She didn't let me finish. I'm telling you, she said, voice low and exact, that the records from that night were not created under normal conditions. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it. Behind me, my dad spoke again, but this time, his voice wasn't confident. It was strained. Then pull the records, he said. All of them. Prove what you're implying. The nurse held his gaze for a long second. Then she nodded once. I can access the archived logs, she said, but you're not going to like what's in them. She moved toward the door, hand hovering over the handle. Then she stopped and looked back at me. If the identities were assigned wrong that night, POWs, heavy, deliberate, then there's no guarantee you were ever matched to the right family. Wait. The word came out sharper than I intended, stopping her just as her hand touched the door. My pulse was racing now, everything narrowing down to one question that refused to stay quiet. You're saying I might have been switched? I asked. The nurse didn't answer right away. She turned back slowly, like there was no version of this conversation that ended clean. I'm saying, she replied carefully, that during those minutes, identification was compromised. That's not the same thing, my dad snapped. Compromised doesn't mean time's wrong. No, she agreed, but it means uncertain. That word hit harder than anything else. Uncertain. My entire life reduced to that. Get the records, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She gave a small nod and stepped out. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving the three of us alone in that cramped office. No one spoke at first. Then my dad let out a breath, pacing once across the room. This is ridiculous. Hospitals cover themselves all the time. She's planting doubt to avoid liability. Or, she's telling the truth. I shot back. There is no truth where a child just ends up in the wrong family for 24 years, he said. That doesn't happen. I held up the DNA results. This doesn't happen either. That stopped him. For once, he didn't have a counter. I turned to my mom. She hadn't moved. She was sitting on the edge of the chair now, hands gripping each other so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Mom, I said quietly, look at me. She didn't. Look at me. Slowly, she lifted her head. Her eyes were already glassy, and that was when it clicked. Not suspicion, not fear. Recognition. You knew, I said. It wasn't a question. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. You knew there was a chance, I continued, stepping closer, that something was wrong, and you just let him keep saying I wasn't his? That's not fair, she whispered. Not fair? I let out a hollow laugh. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I was trying to protect you. From what? The truth? From losing you, she snapped, the words breaking out of her all at once. The room went still. My dad frowned. What is that supposed to mean? She shook her head, tears slipping now. You don't understand. If I said anything, if I questioned it, they could have taken her. There would have been investigations, lawyers. I could have lost her completely. So instead, I said, my voice dropping, you said nothing, and let him treat me like I didn't belong. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence said everything. A knock hit the door. 3 sharp taps. All of us turned. The nurse stepped back in, a thin folder in her hand older than anything I'd seen in that building so far. The edges were worn, papers slightly yellowed. I found the archived logs, she said. No one moved. She walked to the desk and set the folder down carefully, like it weighed more than it should. These are copies, she added. Originals are sealed. My dad stepped forward first, flipping it open without hesitation. Pages rustled quickly as his eyes scanned line after line. Then he slowed. His expression shifted. 2 entries, he muttered. Same timestamp, same delivery room. I moved beside him, looking down. 2 baby IDs, both marked female. One line partially crossed out. Rewritten. Different handwriting. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? I asked. The nurse exhaled quietly. It means, she said, at some point during the outage, those identities were reassigned. My dad looked up at her sharply. Reassigned based on what? She held his gaze. Best judgment. The room felt like it tilted. I stared at the page, at the crossed out line, at the correction that didn't look like a correction. It looked like a guess, a decision, a choice. And suddenly, none of this felt theoretical anymore. Then figure it out, my dad said, his voice rising again. But now there was something underneath it, something unstable. Run whatever tests you need. Fix it. The nurse didn't move. We can try, she said. But after this long, confirmation isn't always immediate. I felt something settle in my chest. Cold, final. Do it, I said. She nodded once, then reached for the phone on the desk. I'm calling the lab, she said. We'll need extended DNA comparison, not just parental database matching. My dad blinked. Database? For potential biological relatives, she said. Silence. Then I asked the question that no one else would. If I'm not theirs? My voice wavered despite everything. Then where is the other child? The nurse didn't answer right away. Her fingers tightened slightly around the receiver. And then she said, That's exactly what we're about to find out. The waiting was worse than the test. Hours stretched into something shapeless. The three of us sitting in that same small office, while calls were made behind closed doors. Papers moved. Voices stayed low. Every now and then, someone glanced at me like I was the center of a problem no one wanted to fully say out loud. By the time the nurse came back, it was evening. She didn't sit this time. That was the first sign. The lab expedited the comparison, she said, holding a new report thicker than the first one. We ran your DNA against extended databases, including historical patient records tied to that night. My dad stood up immediately. And? She looked at me, not him. We have a match. Everything in me locked. Not to them, she continued, to another family. The room went completely still. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. My dad didn't move at all. On the same night, the nurse said, opening the file, another couple had a daughter. Their records were also adjusted after the outage. I stepped closer, barely aware of my own movement. Where are they? They've been located, she said. And they raised a child who is not biologically theirs either. It landed exactly how it sounded. Not a mistake that fixed itself. A mistake that split into two lives. Names, my dad demanded. I want names. The nurse hesitated, but only for a second. Then she read them. I didn't recognize them. But that didn't matter. Because somewhere out there was someone who had lived my life in reverse, raised in a different house, with different parents, who weren't actually hers. And I had been here for 24 years. I let out a breath that didn't feel like relief. So, that's it? We were just assigned? No, the nurse said quietly. You were placed based on the best decision they thought they could make in a crisis. A guess, I said. She didn't argue. My dad finally spoke again, but the edge was gone. So all these years? He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. All those accusations, all that certainty, gone. Replaced with something heavier. My mom broke first. I thought if I loved you enough, it wouldn't matter, she said to me, tears falling freely now. I thought if I never questioned it, it would stay real. I looked at her, really looked this time. You let me grow up thinking I didn't belong anywhere, I said. Not loud, not angry, just clear. She nodded, because there was nothing else she could do. My dad stepped back, like the distance might undo something. For years, he had pushed me away over a belief. Now the truth was worse than what he imagined. I wasn't his, but I was never anyone else's either. Not in the way that counted. Legal teams got involved within days. The hospital case didn't stay quiet this time. Too many records, too much proof. What happened that night became public, and with it, everything my dad had said about me for years came back on him. People who used to nod along started asking questions. He stopped talking about it entirely. I met the other family a week later. It wasn't emotional the way you'd expect. No instant connection, no sense of something clicking. Just recognition. Two people looking at each other, realizing their entire lives had been built on the same mistake. We didn't try to replace anything. You can't. But we understood each other in a way no one else could. As for me, I didn't go back home. Not with him. Not right away with her either. Because for the first time, the question wasn't times where I came from. It was what I was going to do with it. And standing outside that hospital one last time, holding both reports in my hand, the one that broke everything, and the one that explained it, I finally understood something that no test could define for me. For 24 years, they argued about whether I belonged. Now, that decision was mine.